When I was in elementary school, there was a pretty big maintenance house, storage house in my house. One day, when I happened to see through the window inside what stored and discovered, there was a very pretty black umbrella, the toy umbrella, hanging probably by the thread of a spider web in the air. I thought to myself, before my brother, who was 8 years older, take that, I have to get it. And I go inside and checked where it was. But it was not there, even though I searched each corner of that storage house. From the window, I look inside again. It was there in the air. I entered it again and discovered that there is no umbrella inside. Suddenly, I became very scared. What's going on in this maintenance house? Is that kind of a ghost inside? I immediately left the storage house. For the next several days, I was not near that maintenance house. And one day, I entered in that maintenance house with my brother. I told what I discovered, and it was not there. And we searched that cute umbrella toy. Do you know what it was?
Reflection.
Yeah. It was the image of the paper package on the box. It's not supposed to get wet, rain, the umbrella image. And it's very fragile, the broken glass image and so on. But outside the storage out through the window, it looks like really a black toy. So immediately, my fear disappeared. Let's imagine, in case we are chased by some ghost or some fierce animal in a dream, what's the best way to be away from that fear or from that scary object? We can find some hiding place, or we can strengthen ourselves to confront with that object. But the best or the fundamental way is, just wake up. It's the end of the story. Enlightenment is called in Korean 깨다. 깨다, that verb literally means wake up, awakening. People say enlightenment a lot, but what does that specifically mean? How do you understand? For instance, Shakyamuni Buddha attained a great enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. When you hear that, what does enlightenment mean? Michael, how do you understand?
I think it could be many things. But I think of clarity and sharing.
Jason, how do you understand the word enlightenment?
I guess it's an awareness, or the opposite of ignorance, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. All your answers are very correct. There are so many ways to describe what enlightenment means. It is basically seeing into the ultimate reality, seeing into our true self or original nature, understanding completely the universal truth, and so on. Why is the enlightenment meaningful? Why is it significant to us, to practitioners?
Well, once you tempted to seek it, it makes you want to seek it. It makes you want to feel what that feels like or see what that is. I think.
John?
Maybe because enlightenment for me is the truth. And we found the truth, and we don't want to lose the truth. Stay in the truth.
Okay, very good. Yeah. How about Abby?
Well, I think being able to look and integrate the good and evil in each of us, and respect that whole is something that's struck for, and I think that when I can not judge others' evil, then it won't be there anymore.
All your answers are very correct, but practically speaking, enlightenment means the end of a suffering in our life. That's why it is very, very important. Not just to Buddhist priests or some Buddhist monks, or to each and every person, whether they are ordained or laity, or they live in Asia or in the United States. When Bodhisattva of great compassion, when he realized the 5 aggregates are empty, when he see into our true self, he became free from all suffering and distress. So Buddha very interchangeably used the word enlightenment, nirvana. Nirvana means fire being extinguished, the end of a desire, unwholesome desire, or unconditioned. Essentially, they are the same thing. Likewise, if we just wake up, all things, just whether it was a tiger or some evil spirit, we can be free from all those worries and concerns. It is the ultimate antidote for suffering. Let's think about that. How can we, on a daily basis, how can we be away, free from unwholesome desires, pride, anger, inferior complex, and so on? What is the root of these feelings?
It's what you're thinking, and if you're aware, it's like stopping yourself.
Yeah, definitely it comes in our mind. Yeah, it is of our mind creation. Even though we know that it is not easy to be away from those thoughts or emotions, some hurt feelings. In order to be, one master said, how can we be away, free from some trap? The best way to be free from the trap is to study the trap, What is the origin, root of all those, our unwholesome desires, anger, pride, and so on, that bothers us? What is the root? For example, if there is a tree, if the root is severed, eventually it will be dead. The root of our desire, anger, pride, whatever things that bothers us, drive us into agony or worry, is our sense of self. Our notion of selfhood is the root of all these thoughts and emotions. Does that make sense? Specifically speaking, enlightened means the empty nature of these things, the empty nature of our sense of self is of our mind's creation. It is just illusion. It's of our mental construct. That realization is enlightenment. That's why enlightenment means the end of suffering and the distress. That's why it's very practically important. That's why meditation, it is not just a stress reduction technique. It's very, very considering the ending suffering for good, studying the Dharma, and the practice meditation is very, very realistically meaningful and practically helpful. Then, how can we reach enlightenment? How can we attain great awakening? How do you think?
Through meditation and gaining wisdom.
Gaining wisdom, yeah. Very, very exact word. Some other thoughts?
By being humble and willing.
Yeah. Being humble is one of the best way to dissolve our ego. Yeah, very good.
Seek honesty.
Oh, seek honestly. Yes, it all starts from our seeking. Yeah, for that.
True honesty.
Yeah,
Love.
love. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. But usually, as long as enlightenment means realization or seeing into the ultimate reality, enlightenment starts from raising question about that universal truth. Unless you raise questions, unless you have a very sincere questioning mind, you cannot get the answer. You cannot get the solution. Think about that. Isaac Newton thought about, is there some single universal principle that can explain all phenomenon in the universe? In the late fall, when he happened to see an apple fall to the ground, he came up with the idea, gravity. If there was a thief by the tree, he may be startled by the sound of the dropping apple. Or if there was a poet around the tree, when he see the apple falling to the ground, he could have composed a beautiful poem. But in the Newton case, he raised the question about the universal principle. That questioning mind led to the solution of that truth. Likewise, enlightenment starts by our raising questions about the ultimate reality. You can pick up some sentence from the scripture, or you can work with the koan or spiritual question that your teacher gives you. It does not matter. Questioning mind is the foundation of enlightenment. The ultimate reality that's symbolized by this circular image, we usually say that it is a realm before a thought arises. One philosopher said, I think, therefore I am. But when Zen master asked, if we don't think, who are we? It is a realm before a thought arises. Enlightenment starts from some questioning mind, but ultimately, in order to see into that ultimate reality, our thinking mind, our dualistic mindset should dissolve. It should disappear. to understand, to be one with that realm before our thoughts arise. For example, let's think about the nature of a Kwan. Kwan is some spiritual question that in older days Zen masters gave their students to work with in their minds, like what's the sound of one hand clapping? How can one hand make a sound? What's the sound of one hand clapping? Or what is your original face like before your parents are born? What do I look like? What my original face is like before our parent is born? This kind of a question that, particularly in Zen tradition, the Zen masters gave their students defies rational thinking. By our logical mind, we can never understand those spiritual questions. So Kwan looks like a riddle, but riddle can be solved by our reasoning. But when it comes to the Kwan or spiritual questions, only when our dualistic mindset and the thinking mind disappears, we can come up with the answer. When our mind is calm, peaceful, focused, then a lot of some spiritual questions start to rise to practitioners. It does not matter they are Buddhists or Christians, Muslim. For instance, one of the master in won-buddhism, Dasan, he told us this story. When he was 8 or 9 years old, he was raised in the rural area. His mother asked him to catch a rooster. They had some special guest in order to. And that 9-year-old boy, in order to catch that rooster, pretty big hand, he first closed the front door, and all the chickens freely wander around, live in his inner court. When he chased after that rooster, but it's a big rooster, it's not easy to catch. And he chased after the rooster for almost more than 30 minutes inside the inner court. And he was very, very exhausted, and he reclined against a tree in order to take a breath. All of a sudden, this question, he told us, rose to his mind. Why does that thing, that chicken, was born as a rooster? Why was I born as a human? It is not the level of a children's curiosity. He was very deep in that question for several days, even though he was 9 years old. When our mind becomes calm, focused, tranquil, then this kind of questions very, very naturally arise. And one day, we become so deeply absorbed in that question. We are so deep into that. And through that question, we enter a very, very deep samadhi. We become very deeply absorbed in meditation. For example, when we practice sitting meditation here, we usually follow our breath to stay centered, focused. It's one way. But ultimately, when it comes to the very deep samadhi, it usually comes through the door of spiritual questions. One of the greatest Buddhist master in Korea is Manggong. That monk Manggong, when he was in his early 20s, at that time he was a novice working in some monastery. His teacher gave him a koan or spiritual question. This is a very, very well-known koan. Many Zen students work with. All dharmas or phenomena return to one, they say, all dharmas return to one. Then, where does that one return? Where does one return to? So he worked with the koan very, very diligently. But he just mechanically contemplated that koan. It cannot be his own. But one day, he started to become very deeply absorbed in that koan. Or he see, or he hear, or he thought, it's just the koan. The word became that koan. So whether he walks, whether he eats, whether he sleeps, that question was always in his mind and heart. He naturally become in samadhi. And one day, when he make a fire to steam to cook the rice, when he feed the fire, pushing a lot of firewood inside the fire pit, when he heard the cracking sound of the firewood, he was enlightened. But to most of the practitioners, those spiritual questions do not arise. Or even though those spiritual questions arise, we cannot go very deep in those questions. It is because our mind is with a lot of worldly things, and our mind is not focused and peaceful enough. So my teacher used this analogy. When you try to catch a fish with a fishing rod, even when the fish take the bait, at that moment you have to strike the fishing rod. Otherwise, the fish just eat the bait and it escapes from the hook. At that very moment, you have to strike the fishing rod. Striking that fishing rod is like empowering our mind, Why meditation and enlightenment cannot be separate? It is because meditation or spiritual cultivation, whether it is a chanting meditation or Reverend Joe's moving meditation, it's all kind of a spiritual cultivation approach. Through whatever method, through this meditative approach, we can empower our mind. When our mind is empowered, then we can go very deep into those spiritual questions. Our third head Dharma master, Master Venerable Daesan, used this analogy. Honing our innate wisdom, as you define the enlightenment in that way, honing our innate wisdom, it's like the turbine generators creating electricity in a hydroelectric power plant. The electric generator is constantly spinning around. It is constantly generating the electricity. That is like honing our wisdom. But in order to turn around that electrical generator, what we need is a lot of water. We should first of all have a lot of water in the dam. Otherwise, however good quality turbine you purchased, it cannot create electricity. So wisdom and meditation or spiritual cultivation cannot be separated. That's why meditation or forms of spiritual cultivation method is very much important. He said in this way, I translated his word, in order to attain great enlightenment, one should always study and ponder koans, which is the key to enlightenment. To get enlightened as soon as possible, one should maintain the one-pointed state of mind. One can attain great enlightenment after acquiring a great spiritual power of choice in action. Spiritual power of choice means our power of our mind to carry out what we think is right. And the last thing is observing the precepts, living in a very, very ethical or moral way is also very, very important to attain enlightenment. Because if our conduct is not ethical, then our mind cannot be concentrated. Our life is not peaceful in the long run. Temporarily, it looks like a lot of things become very easygoing. But in the long run, ethical behavior always leads to the concentrated, peaceful state of mind. What's the reader?
The founding master said, do you know the fundamental cause of your mind being either distracted or peaceful when you are practicing one-pointedness of mind? It is whether in action you are always doing the right thing or not. The person who is doing the right thing may seem at first to face many complications and difficult obstacles, but as he continues with his task, his body and mind will gradually become supple and peaceful. And as his road ahead opens widely, he will achieve one-pointedness. The person who is doing something wrong may seem at first to have an intriguing and easy time of it, but as he continues with his task, his body and mind will gradually become troubled and pained. And as his road ahead becomes blocked, one-pointedness becomes impossible. Therefore, if we are to practice in perfect one-pointedness, we must first eliminate wrong aspirations and bring an end to wrong action.
Okay, thank you so much. Enlightenment is ultimately revealing the innate wisdom from within ourselves. But if we have a lot of water inside that gong, we can bring that outside. Then at night, the surface can reflect the moon. The surface should be without a ripple. So let's imagine containing or reflecting the moon is like revealing our innate wisdom or prana. Removing all those ripples is like a meditation or spiritual approach. So without a concentrated, focused mind, wisdom cannot arise. But this ball itself is constantly moving. Then how can we expect the water becomes still? So stability of that ball is like ethical conduct, which starts from observing the precepts, like to not steal, to not kill, to not commit sexual misconduct, to not lie, and so on. So these are three approaches: wisdom, spiritual cultivation or meditation, and the ethical conduct is so-called in Buddhism threefold practice, threefold training, in order to ultimately to reveal our innate wisdom. Why it's important? Because that is the end of suffering and agony in our life. When we, just like when I immediately saw that toy black umbrella is not the real thing. It is just the image on the paper box. Immediately my fear and the worry disappeared. Likewise, at that moment, we see into our true self or ultimate reality. All those, a lot of things that pose a lot of obstacle in our life, whether it's anger or whatever things, unwholesome desire start to disappear. That's why enlightenment is that practically important. And the path to reach there is so-called threefold training: meditation, wisdom, and observing the precepts of mindful choice in action in the Won Buddhist terminology.